Next, we are going to hear from our valedictorian. The valedictorian role is one of honor. It is given to a deserving student, and words that I wrote down as we were hearing the description of this student are diligent, perseverant, committed, and confident. And I introduce to you our valedictorian, John Lee.
Good afternoon, fellow teachers, classmates, friends, and family. It is with my greatest honor to be represented as this year's 2020 valedictorian. 2020 has been a rough year, but thank you for everyone who stood strong. I would like to thank all the staff and friends who have helped me get to where I am now. Thank you for all the people who have come, nephews, grandparents, cousins, and friends. Rhema is a school where students will get the proper attention and knowledge of God. The staff at Rhema prepared me for high school, and I'm happy to see that more kids like me attend this school. What makes Rhema special are the fun people, the warm community, and a willingness to help each other. I have had numerous amazing experiences during my time at Rhema. My time here was full of kindness and understanding. The first teacher who made me experience this was no other than Mrs. Herder. As I went into SK, Mrs. Herder was kind to me as well as everyone I knew. Thank you, Mrs. Herder, for making me feel welcome as I entered Rhema. The scripture I would remember for Mrs. Herder would be Proverbs 16:24. Kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul, and healthy for the body. The next year, I joined Mrs. Wiley. That was the year I noticed that Mrs. Wiley was the expression of faith, cheerfulness, dedication, and the love for animals. When I first came into Mrs. Wiley's class, there were animals everywhere. The giant giraffe on the wall, the animals in the corner, Lester the sloth beyond Mrs. Wiley's desk, and then later in the year, we eventually started to dress up as animals. Mrs. Wiley loves animals, but not as much as worshiping. Mrs. Wiley's been leading chapel since I arrived until I graduated from Rhema. Chapel has taught many of us students not to worship by only our mouths, but also with our hearts, as well to demonstrate a strong dedication of faith. The Bible verse I thought of for Mrs. Wiley is 2 Corinthians 5:7. For we walk by faith, not by sight. I know nobody that has a greater love for gardening than Mrs. Wilson. When I went into Mrs. Wilson's classroom, I thought it was some sort of greenhouse. Whenever we went outside to help with the gardening at the school, Mrs. Wilson would occasionally link our devotions or math or Bible classes to them. Mrs. Wilson taught me that patience is an important trait. As I look back now, I understand that if you have enough patience, something good will come. The Bible verse I have for Mrs. Wilson is 1 Corinthians 3:7. It's not important who does the planting or who does the watering. What's important is that God makes the seed grow. Now there's Mr. Voskamp. I've never seen a teacher more passionate and so energetic about teaching others about Christ and how the Toronto Maple Leafs is the best team in the NHL. We students had this game with Mr. Voskamp. I would say if Toronto lost, Mr. Voskamp would give me a box of Mike and Ice. But if they won, I had to give Mr. Voskamp a box of Mike and Ice. That was one of the best games I played during my time at Rhema. Mr. Voskamp was an energetic teacher, never giving up when things seemed hard. I learned from Mr. Voskamp not to give up until you tried your best. The Bible verse I chose for Mr. Voskamp is Psalms 118, 24. This is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Our final years at Rhema were spent with Mr. McPhail. Mr. McPhail prepared me well for high school, and I'm glad to see that he's helping my younger friends the same way he did for us. Mr. McPhail would consistently talk about having a growth mindset. He would link it with devotions or math until we would understand how special it is to have one. One of the main themes I got from being with Mr. McPhail was to focus on the bright side. The passage I will remember Mr. McPhail by is Ephesians 6:11. Put on all of God's armor, so that you will be able to stand firm against all strategies of the devil. I would like to thank Mrs. Voskamp for the CARE program, Mrs. Krapp and Mrs. Harbage for the resource program, Ms. Revere, Ms. Finesse, Mrs. Cameron, and Mrs. Burnett for teaching us how to worship God in other ways than with our voice. And Mr. Savoy, Mrs. Kamstra, and Mrs. Goadsby, I thank you for French instruction. I only knew Mrs. Holmes for about a year, but I can say with full confidence that she is a great principal and I am proud to be one of her students. Mrs. Holmes did something generous called Water for Water. I learned from Mrs. Holmes to be generous and understanding. A Bible verse I chose for Mrs. Holmes is 2 Corinthians 9:11. You can be enriched in every way, so that you can be generous on every occasion, and through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. Throughout the years at Rhema, these teachers have helped us make wonderful memories during our elementary years, helping us all grow academically and spiritually. The scripture that I chose from my years at Rhema is Philippians 4 verse 13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The reason I chose this scripture is because it reminds me of the story of Joseph. He was sold into slavery by his own brothers in Egypt. He still has faith in God after what happened, and although it took a while, Joseph became the second ruler of Egypt. Joseph did this with a strong dedication of faith. Joseph had patience as he was in slavery. Joseph didn't give up. Joseph focused on the brighter side and was understanding and generous when his brothers needed him. The things I've learned from the staff at Rhema have helped me get to where I am now, and I would like to thank you all for all of that. What you need to get out of this or remember is that you can do anything with Christ if your faith is strong enough. Thank you for listening.
John Lee, confident, kind, persistent. Hebrews 10:35-36. So do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded. You need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what he has promised.
We missed you, Esther.
Danielle Masuelo.